Russ has no beard. Welcome everybody to the All Time Greats podcast, ATG. Definitely good to be able to be back for another one. We last time we had a great start to it. We're going over all of the league's teams, and we got some good breakdowns of who we feel like is in power now and who will be in power in the future. And we talked. I think we all pretty much agreed that Russ was not going to be in power anymore after about a year or so. Is that right, Russ?
Uh, Totally false. Totally false.
I think we
You
did.
got a beard, do good in this league. You and Green are out.
There you go, Nate.
Get a beard, get some facial hair, freaking mustache or something.
That is Nate's secret. So yeah, that is Nate. That is Russ, and I am John. Looking forward to this time around continuing what we did, because the only team that was not spared from ridicule was the team most worthy of ridicule, and that is my team, which has very few players, and we'll talk about that. And then we're going to jump into a beginning of our talent specific lists, nothing to do with fantasy, with actual fantasy ranking, but what players are just straight up the most talented across each position, because sometimes talent will win out and sometimes it's about opportunity. But it is good to be able to judge talent specifically in a vacuum, to be able to know if talent really is coming into opportunity or if a player is just all opportunity and no talent. And so we'll start jumping into that when we go over tight ends and quarterbacks today in the talent independent lists. And then we'll be talking about some trades that we've made in the leagues. There will be some additional ridicule, I think a fair amount of ridicule for some trades that have been happening. We're going to talk about our least favorite trades that we've ever made, starting off and with that. And then we will be, we'll be finishing off the podcast with that. And before that, since I was feeling horribly broken down at the end of our school year, we are all in education, all three of us. And I felt like we definitely needed to make part of what we were doing about broken down players that really didn't have much left, much like me at the end of this past school year. Boys, unless you have something to add to that, shall we jump into part of the reason why I was feeling broken down?
Let's do it. Yes.
Go do it.
This would be the reason. Elder Juan, very proud of my name, but the reason why we are feeling such sad feelings is this right here. So boys, have at it.
Well, John, so it seems that you have recently made a full commitment to rebuilding your team.
Well, you just jumped right into that, Russ. Huh? These boys had that. Russ was like, John, we're going to talk. Okay, I'll let me sit back. You guys discuss this.
I just think
for this.
I just think there's an opportunity. So, John, you won a championship not long ago. So, from your perspective, right, looking back at it, what transpired? How did you go from championship to rebuild so quickly?
Well, you mentioned it the last time we were in front of the camera, and that was that my team made it through to the playoffs and into the championship on guile. You know, I was very in tune to what the good plays were. I made some really smart moves to be able to get into the championship specifically. I got into the playoffs on the backs of really big seasons from Kareem Hunt, who would later be out for the whole entire year, and from Travis Kelce, and we talked about Andrew Luck and a few other people at the time. But my team wasn't going to be a perennial contender as it was constructed. So I made a couple of moves that turned out to be bad moves, trying to push further into the conversation of more of a contender than I currently was. And they snowballed on me. We'll talk about a few of them when we talk about trades that we regret. But ultimately, it became clear that I was going to need to rebuild. And so what I have done in the last few months, is I've really started to trade away all of my pieces that were going to be starters, amassing as many 2022 and 2023 first round picks as I possibly can. And I'm feeling pretty decent about where I'm headed as far as the rebuild goes, but it will result in a solid 101 pick at the start of this upcoming 2022 draft for sure.
John had to win that year. I remember he had to, because we charged $2 a waiver wire transaction. you wavered wired the shit out of that year. I mean, it was like every week there was like 3 or 4 transitions by the Elder Wand. And some of them, I was just like, what the hell was he thinking? And then next week, the guy would blow up for 20 points and he'd drop them 2 weeks later for someone else. I mean, it was a revolving door that year that you won the championship. One thing I could say is I was really impressed how you managed that waiver that year. You killed it, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I said Nate's team was infinitely better when we spoke last time, and that was actually meant to be a compliment to you, John, that you were able to win with guile and guts and smoke and mirrors, but you got the championship. So I think we're both impressed with how you were able to accomplish that. So how do you feel now? You said you feel pretty good
about the picks that I've accumulated. Yeah, certainly the players that are left, the cupboard is pretty bare remaining, and I still have a few other players that I intend to let play out in the season and be able to gain more picks from them. But yeah, if you guys have any
who's your favorite player, John, on your squad?
My favorite player on the squad right now is probably either Henry Ruggs or Irv Smith. I really like the fact that Irv Smith's 22 years old and nobody realizes it. You know, he's basically as young as some college people coming out. You know, so he's been in it for a long time and just getting his first crack at it. I think Ruggs and Irv Smith, and obviously Kenny Galladay, who is right now currently a commodity, a startable commodity on winning teams. Those guys are guys that I'm planning on dealing for picks as I continue my rebuilding strategy.
Let's go into Ruggs a little bit. What do you expect from Ruggs in the future?
Well, the main thing with Ruggs is kind of similar to what we talked about when we mentioned Dylan the Graves team. You know, he was the very first wide receiver taken in last year's draft. And when you talk to Dylan,
but did you take into account it was the Raiders that took him?
Yeah, no, I think every fantasy manager took into account it was the Raiders that took him when they took guys like Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb and those guys more seriously than they took Henry Ruggs, and rightfully so. But you know, if you try to go after Denzel Mims in Dylan's team right now, he'll tell you he was a first round pick, and he's not looking at him any differently, despite the frustrating rookie year that he had. And that's because they still are only sophomores in the league who are very highly thought of and high draft capital spent on them. And Ruggs, even more so, is a guy who hasn't really had any additional competition brought into his situation. They're still the number one guy will be your boy Waller there, Nate, but he's still got just as much of a chance to be involved in an offense that needs to be heavy in the pass because their defense is about as bad as it gets.
That statement is true. Now, on your roster, who's the up and comer? Who's the sleeper on your roster?
Sleeper? Well, I still believe.
I know who I would pick, but
okay. Well, I mean, I want to hear you guys' take on it because because obviously you guys are the Titans, you have all the pull. But I still believe very much in Bryan Edwards. I still believe very much in Jameis Winston, who I think is going to get the job as the Saints quarterback, and believing in Sean Payton and the passing offense. I still believe in Darnell Mooney, who was actually getting a lot of hype and buzz. And Daniel Jones is a guy who I think a lot of people are giving up on way too early because he showed tremendous flashes. So I've acquired the players that I've acquired mostly picks. So you can't see a lot of the people the capital that I've acquired recently, but the players that I've acquired recently are players that I believe are being given up on a little bit too soon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about you?
I love you got the Cephas, man, the Quintez Cephas. I think that guy's actually got a lot of potential. I mean, he's prototypically built like just an alpha wide receiver. Not really sure what's holding him back. I don't know. I watched the guy play, the moves he makes, the way he contorts his body. One of my probably secrets is I love those guys that could twist in the air. The Godwins, that could just twist their body in a 360 to catch a ball. I don't know how they do it. I would snap in 3 places, but I love watching it.
That's actually a really important point. One that you don't see people bring up very often. Though you hear people say ball skills a lot when you're talking about analysts, but ball skills can mean a lot of different things. That specific ability you're talking about to just twist in the air. Speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I love those guys that could really get into the air and twist around. Calvin Ridley's another one that does a great job of it. And it's almost like he makes up with that jumping ability with his just being able to twist in the air. And I mean, the guy could jump obviously, but he does it a little bit different. Same with Godwin. They're not the straight up, I'm just going to jump over you like Julio Jones. I mean, they'll wrap around you like a snake to grab that ball. And that part's one of the funnest things to watch for me when it comes to wide receivers. The athleticism just is through the air.
Body control, yeah. And I'm glad to hear you, give some props to Quintez Cephas, because I traded for him on a very low stakes trade, but they have so few people over there, and you hear nothing positive coming out of Detroit really, or anywhere, about Quintez Cephas, and I've been a little concerned about that, but I'm glad he still has your belief.
Yeah, they got to throw it somewhere. I mean, someone's got to catch the ball over there.
Absolutely. Russ, do you have any thoughts? Gabriel Davis is another one that I actually really like a lot. I think he's going to be the long-term answer, number 2 there, if that offense keeps passing as much as they look like they want to pass with Josh Allen. And
they just bring Sanders in?
They did, but I mean, how old is Sanders? Like, he could be overtaken by Gabriel Davis as early as this year. Maybe Sanders holds up one more, but Emmanuel Sanders could be in our broken down players section of this show very easily.
Absolutely. How do you, just offhand, do you know how tall Gabriel Davis is? Because he looks humongous. I mean, when you see the guy, he looks like he could be one of the bigger receivers in the league. And I don't know if he is or not, but
I mean, I don't think he's like 6'5" or anything like that, but I believe he's 6'2", 6'3". I believe he's up there.
Interesting. Guy's built like a man, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, he's a horse. Russ, did you have anything you wanted to add before we move on to the next section? We've said our prayers for this poor team.
Well, yeah, Gabe Davis was actually the guys in the say in terms of on the sleeper list. I like Gabriel Davis, and again, I don't know if it's going to be this year, but he definitely exceeded expectations last year already, and I think he has less competition now, has a year under his belt. Obviously, he's attached to a fantastic quarterback and in a volume passing system. So I love Gabe Davis. I look at your lineup, and I think you've got a lot of young guys with blow up potential, right? Obviously, not a lot of proven commodities, but it feels, outside looking in, it feels like you've taken a lot of lottery shots on, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, which are the more longer term pieces, the more stable pieces. It looks like you've consciously, especially with your Saquon trade, consciously lowered the priority on running backs, which seems like, and I'm curious if you would say that that's part of the building process, right? Get those long-term pieces established and then bringing running backs in last. Is that a conscious decision you're making?
Yeah, and we've talked about this recently, but yeah, I think if anytime you're trying to win over, we talked about planning out 3 years in advance. If you're hoping to win over the next 3 years, your running backs may be good for only those 3 years before you have to retool and come up with a whole new set of running backs. So as much as I love Saquon Barkley, he's literally my favorite running back in football, and I'm really excited. I've got him in a lot of the other dynasty leagues that I'm in. I have a lot of pieces of dynasty stock in Saquon Barkley, including stock on predictionstrike.com. They're free plug, not a sponsor. Predictionstrike.com, by the way, you're not a sponsor yet, but you absolutely could be. Give us a call. But I have a lot of stock on Saquon Barkley in many different fronts. But if I'm building a winner eventually, Saquon Barkley may be on his, maybe in the middle of his second contract by the time I'm ready to win. And I want him. I really did want to hold out for him, but I got enough value to be able to look for the future by dealing him.
And one more guy I got to bring up on your roster, just the potential for a humongous breakout is Amari Rodgers. I think that guy, if of course Aaron Rodgers decides he likes playing football still, and not being a big jerk, this guy could really break out. Can be one of the better receivers on that are better second receivers that team has had in a long time.
And it alludes to what I really feel, which is that Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. He's going to be playing. I feel strongly about that.
After today, I think he's going to be playing. He could have opted out today and he didn't.
Right. Yeah, he's going to be there. And Amari Rodgers is actually pretty impressive. Some mention has been made of his age, but still a very productive college player. And it's not like the Packers haven't taken slightly older breakout players and made it happen with the kind of talent that they have at quarterback. The next thing that I do believe that we have, basically said last rites for this team, and rightfully so. The next thing that we were going to be bringing up, though, is our independent list, independent talent only for the quarterback position, and then eventually the tight end position, and eventually the running back position. But I thought we would start with quarterback, because quarterback to me, and Russ and I had a disagreement about this the other day, quarterback to me is the most, when you make a talent independent list at quarterback, it is the one that most mirrors all the other lists. To me, all the other lists are very different. My running back talent only list is very different than a top fantasy list. But at quarterback, if you have all that talent, it's often the case that your offense is going to be your team is going to be putting their offense in your hands, and you're proving how talented you are. There are only a few cases where I feel like that's not the case. But Russ, you had a different take on what a situation independent list for quarterbacks should look like. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
When you posed this question, I was thinking about what quarterback could step into any team, any system, and execute. And so I felt like I started landing on those quarterbacks with more experience and what I perceive more of a cognitive approach, right? Because I think there are some really talented quarterbacks, and I don't know that I could see them step into any system, right? On a COVID shortened year, for example, switch team, step in and execute on Sunday. I think that's a shorter list. And I think in my process, devalued the athletic traits. And I think it elevated the cognitive traits and the arm talent, I guess, maybe more than some of the mobility for a quarterback to step in and execute in any situation. So I wonder how different our lists look based on that.
I think sometimes that mobility hides about how bad of a quarterback they are.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, but are we making a list of passing ability? Are we making a list of people independent based on talent, independent of situation? Because if you're talking about the most talented players, mobility adds to that talent.
The way I approached it is, I just inherited a football team. I could have any quarterback. I'm talking real football. I could have any quarterback in the league. What quarterback would I want on my team? That's the way I approached it.
All right, bring it on. What was your list?
My list, number one was Aaron Rodgers. I can't imagine picking any other quarterback other than him. He's the smartest quarterback out there. The talent speaks for itself. The arm strength still at the age he has, he slings it like a young man still. You want me to give my whole top five right now, or?
Yeah, well, who's your top five? We'll hear each other's top five, and then we'll debate.
Next one would be the GOAT, Tom Brady. Can't argue. It speaks for himself. I mean, the championships are ridiculous. I'm a Raider fan. I hate him to death, but you got to recognize. And in fact, if I wasn't such a Raider fan, he might be number one. I don't know. Maybe I'm being biased there.
All right. I can tell you, I already have a tremendous beef with your list, and I can't wait to pounce on it. But what else did you have?
Third, Patrick Mahomes. Fourth, Russell Wilson, and fifth, Deshaun Watson.
I like the list.
Start a team with Deshaun Watson right now.
Hey, he's still the GOAT, man. Just because he likes massages. I mean, we won't get it. Too many jokes there.
Too many jokes there. Absolutely. Don't move the towel. But he was definitely in the mix. He was definitely in the mix for my top five for sure. But I mean, we can't give you an NFL franchise, Nate. You are doing nothing to interview for the position of real life GM. If you're trying to tell me that you would be given the number 1 overall pick or the number 2 overall pick, and you wouldn't take Pat Mahomes with either of them?
No, I would take Aaron Rodgers, hands down.
You're
It wouldn't be
absolutely crazy person.
that's what I'd want.
It makes
Now, if we're
even-
talking for the next 10 years, that's a different conversation. But I mean, you could talk about these guys, each one of them in their prime. I'm still taking Aaron Rodgers.
Well, we're not talking about them in their prime. That's part of my issue with your list, where you just said if you're starting a team, either definition of what we have said doesn't make any sense in the slightest. If you're starting a team for 1 year, you've got Aaron Rodgers and you've got Pat Mahomes. You had better be taking the best quarterback on the planet, and that is Pat Mahomes.
Disagree with you. Totally disagree with you.
And Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm a 49ers fan, and I can say that now, and I'm very sad about it. But he is not the best quarterback in football right now.
You just beat Patrick Mahomes.
Tom Brady beat Pat Mahomes, or do we not watch the Super Bowl?
Nope.
Tom Brady was lucky he made it through the playoffs with how many turnovers he made. Not saying he played absolutely terrible all the way, but that was a complete team victory. And Pat just didn't have the benefit of having a complete team. They arrived to they showed up for the Super Bowl with no offensive line, and we watched him get absolutely trounced and couldn't throw the ball.
Yeah, and who won the Super Bowl?
But do you feel okay? Do you feel like if you
He's got 9 Super Bowls, you want to tell me that he's not the best quarterback out there
of all time? I believe that, but not right now. If you flip flop Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes in that Super Bowl, you think the
Chiefs? I ain't flip flopping shit because Tom Brady will kick Patrick Mahomes' butt anytime.
But would the Chiefs have won if Tom Brady? Because that's the crux of this exercise, right? Would the Chiefs have won the Super Bowl if they had switched quarterbacks?
Yes, if they had Aaron Rodgers, they still would have won.
Respect. Russ, you want to give us yours?
Sure. So I went Mahomes number 1. Again, I think you have to be crazy not to recognize that Mahomes is the most talented quarterback in a vacuum right now.
Say it without smiling, Russ. Say it without smiling.
I did give the nod to Aaron Rodgers at number 2, however, because I do think he's got plenty in the tank. MVP season, right? So I think if I need to put a quarterback into any situation in a vacuum, Aaron Rodgers still got to be there. I do actually have Russell Wilson next. Again, I think his balance of his intellect in the game, his arm talent, and his mobility make him tough to beat.
Just the coaching.
Yeah, well, you could argue that, absolutely. The next 2 may surprise. These were not on Nate's list at all. I actually have Dak Prescott and Josh Allen, 4 and 5.
Those would have been my next 2.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better. Yeah, so definitely, Brady, obviously he's amazing, but it's just the age thing right now. I don't think he's in that upper echelon. Still super smart, super savvy, but I wouldn't have him in my top 5 currently. So there's my top 5.
And he's a badass. Like the crazy thing about it's amazing what Brady is doing, because I won him this year in redraft leagues. Like I honestly traded for him. I traded, I think, a 3rd round pick in a dynasty league for him the other day because I won him this year in dynasty leagues. Like in leagues that are trying to win right now in superflex leagues, like I want Brady.
Sure.
My 5 is I came at it a little bit differently than you guys did because I came at it. Each of my lists for all of my positions are all just about talent. How talented are they? I certainly see the if I'm coming up with a team or if I need to win with 1 game or 1 drive, where you guys are coming at, it's probably the better way to come at it. But if you're thinking, I thought about when I was building my list just from talent, Pat Mahomes tops any list there. He's number 1, but Kyler Murray was actually number 2, just because I believe so much in how talented he is. I know we've had Nate say that he's not going to be able to stay healthy. And if that is the case, then his talent will diminish and never truly be able to shine. I know Russ disparaged the man's intelligence. I hope he never watches this show. Just absolutely horrible.
Knocking on your door one day.
Have you seen?
So.
Have you watched Kyler Murray interviews?
Yeah, I have. I mean, it doesn't have to be as super.
You.
That's kind of what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be perfectly polished sentences and speech for him to understand the game. I think he's a very smart and savvy quarterback and understander of the game of football. Number 3, again, it's all about talent. Josh Allen has been judged by some to be the most talented quarterback of all time, just based on pure talent. The man runs like a running back linebacker hybrid and has insane arm talent, whose accuracy has improved over this last year. If he continues that accuracy,
Sophomore accurate, maybe you can make that argument. But
he was this past year.
It's 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, if he can maintain that, he's
a little off.
Well, yeah, for sure. But I was looking at it just who are the most talented, and I didn't actually put Lamar Jackson in my top 5. You might think based on my list so far that he would be there. He's an insanely good runner, but he just doesn't pass the ball as well as these guys. I think Kyler's a way better passer, and I think Josh Allen's a way better passer. So he would be in the top 10, but he's not in my top 5. And then Aaron Rodgers came in at 4, just because by any metric, one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play the game. And as you guys said, he still has some tread on the tires. Russell Wilson would be the 5, and the only one that who I was mentioning when I talked about players whose talent and situation don't necessarily jive, because he has been made to play in a run-heavy, defense-centric system for so long. Russ, I was curious about your including Russ Wilson, because you actually stated as a Seahawks fan that you were willing for Russell Wilson to be traded very, very recently. So I'm surprised that you still think he's a top 5 in talent independent quarterback, and yet you were willing to have the team. Say that again?
He was on my top 5 too. I agree with Russ on this.
Yeah. No, that's a can I have to sort through really quickly here. So one, I feel like Russ kind of threw his O-line under the bus in talking about how much he gets sacked. I don't like that. I do feel like Russ creates a lot of those sacks unnecessarily. He will not throw the ball away. And he often runs out of protection and into a sack trying to make a huge play. He makes many of them.
Left. But
I think he makes it very difficult for his offensive line, and I don't like him throwing him under the bus publicly. And then if it starts being hey, I'm bigger than the team and I'm bigger than this organization, then there's just about any player I'm ready to part with at that point. I don't like it. But if he's still all Mr. Go Hawks and all in, then he's my quarterback. And I don't think you can argue what he's accomplished in a difficult system. For producing stats and getting his numbers. So
what do you make of this whole thing with Wilson, that he didn't ask for a trade and all that was a lie? And you think that's just a little bit trying to patch it up? What do you feel went on there?
My guess is it's semantics. I don't know that he ever officially documented a trade request. I think it was probably a lot of his agent using the media, right? And a little allude to another team. I think there's a lot of gamesmanship. I think there's a lot of manipulation. And I think he's probably being technically honest by saying he never formally requested a trade.
This gamemanship seems to be unlimited. That's true.
Unlimited.
That
seems like a good way for us to segue on out. We're going to do another.
Wait. First, would you guys happen to want to hear who PFF has for this exact subject?
For quarterbacks, top 5, bring it on.
It's
PFF, shout out.
Holmes, number 2, Tom Brady, number 3, Aaron Rodgers, 4, Russell Wilson, 5, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson are your top 8 PFF.
So you just copied PFF. That's what
it
you're
sounds like. Yeah.
No, I didn't copy. Mine was in a different order.
Alrighty. So I mentioned how broken down I was feeling at the end of this past school year, and that is a very real thing. And so it spawned one of our first segments being this: broken down players that we feel like don't have anything left. There are a few caveats on my list of 3 broken down players, but I thought that it'd be nice for us to go one at a time to be able to do it. So I'll start with my first broken down player, and I mentioned there was a caveat, but it's Mike Davis. And Mike Davis is a guy who I think honestly is going to be very valuable this year. And Atlanta Falcons running back, They need him. They need a running back. They have nothing behind him. I picked up Javian Hawkins in a lot of leagues, rookie undrafted free agent, just because they have nothing behind Mike Davis. But the guy is still a journeyman running back. He is still getting up there in years for a running back, for a guy who hasn't really done anything to pop until he got a chance to back up CMC in a really nice position last year. I feel like he's going to have one good year if he stays healthy, and I don't feel like that's a guarantee at all because they're going to have to use him a lot. And if he makes it through this year, I don't think we're going to see or hear from Mike Davis again after this year. So I see him as a player whose stock is completely going to be worth nothing after this season. And he may have a good one, but I think it won't be anything after that. Who'd like to go next or comment on Mike Davis?
I don't know if I agree with you at all. Mike Davis seems to be that. I mean, yeah, the guy can't stay healthy for a full season, but on those games that he's healthy, he just seems to have these blow up games. It's been year after year. He has 3 or 4 games that saved me in fantasy last year. I know it saved you that year that you were playing against me. I believe you rode Mike Davis to the championship that year. The guy, he's going to be a serviceable back. I don't think he will ever have a starting gig because obviously Atlanta's going to be taking a first round RB next year, I believe. But I don't know. It's just a few things in this world you can just always depend on. And it's just Mike Davis coming through for you when you really need him.
I think you might be misremembering the player, to be honest with you. I never used Mike Davis to any success, and year after year is definitely a miscategorization because Mike Davis had the starting job for Chicago in Montgomery's first year, David Montgomery's first year, and he took some carries but did horribly, a very nondescript.
Backing out by Montgomery. I mean, come on.
Of course, but he spent the whole year doing horribly inefficient things in front of Montgomery and then losing the job. So definitely he missed that year after year. And I've made no use of Mike Davis. He's been completely nondescript player except for when he got the opportunity to back up Christian McCaffrey and did great things in an already good offense.
Well, he did have a great showing in Seattle in a very part-time role, but when he hit the field, he produced well. Well, I think that's the trick is we could talk about broken down players, but it almost feels like it's fool's gold players in a way, right? Because we could point out a guy like Todd Gurley is broken down, and there's no point in discussing what his
quite literally.
So this is we're trying to identify those players before they're officially on the scrap heap. And so,
how many times was Mike Davis the RB1 last year?
Many times, probably every week that he played. I'm not saying he didn't have a great year last year. Yeah, I'm not saying he didn't have a great year last year, but that was his only good year in his career to his name. And it's been a long career. He was pretty sure he was a 49er for a time.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. Russ?
I don't know. Nate, are you
sorry, Russ.
There goes our whole show.
I cut you off though, Russ. Were you finished with your Mike Davis thought, or did you have?
I was just gonna throw out my first broken down.
Bring it
on. James Conner, and it almost feels mean to choose James Conner because I think he's a guy that we would like to root for. I mean, he came out gangbusters when Lev Bell was sitting out for that year and produced amazing numbers. Of course, great system. Battled cancer, overcame it. Right. And so I think it's a guy that we want to see healthy and want to see producing. I'm just not sure that we're ever going to get to see that again. I think we might see Conner in spurts. I think he has a decent opportunity to get a high percentage of carries in Arizona this year. But I'm just scared to build a team around that guy for fear that he's just going to continually get hurt and never have a season like he once had. So unfortunately, James Conner is in my broken down category.
It does hurt, huh? You want to root for the guy. I mean, he seems like a solid dude. He wants to go out there and play hard. There's certain running backs that I watch, and it just seems like they're earning their paycheck. They're not trying to win the game. They're just, that's him. He hits the hole hard. I mean, that guy wants to win. He wants to uplift his team, and to see his body break down and the cancer thing, going through the chemo like he did, that can't be easy. It can't be. I mean, I just went through a surgery and nothing like he went through. And the strength that I lost during that surgery was just incredible to me. I was blown away by it. So building that back up after something like that, you got to give it to him. I mean, the guy, I mean, if he's not a good football player, he's going to be my hero still. I mean, the guy's just amazing human being.
Absolutely. Would you like to round out our first round of the broken down players, the John Miller Award? Their name.
The John Miller Award. I'm gonna go with the quarterback. I'm gonna go with Carson Wentz. He's another guy that really hit the floor running in the NFL. Almost won a Super Bowl, but watched his backup do it for him. That must have hurt. I can't imagine what that guy went through watching that game and the way it went. But he's one of those guys that the arm talent seems to be there. The mentality seems to be there. It's just the rest of the body's not, and I feel bad for him because it's another one of those just you want to root for him kind of guy. Seems like a real nice guy, solid dude. You want to see him win, but I think his body's just letting him down too soon.
I was one that I was excited to hear you talk about because there's a real divide in the Carson Wentz discussion, in the Carson Wentz debate. There are those who are like, did you see what he did last year? The guy was the worst quarterback in football last year. And then there are those who are saying he's getting back in with Frank Reich, back to the situation that he knows. He's still a young man, a few years removed from MVP caliber seasons.
I know
that's really split. That's a real big split. So I'm glad that one of our Titans has planted his flag on which side of the split.
I'm curious what Russ has to say. Russ for a while was the Wentz truther out of all of us. I mean, he believed in that.
Yeah, and to my demise, right? I had Mahomes and Wentz was my backup, and I believed in Wentz. And then when a Mahomes bye, I lost that week because I think Wentz scored me a whopping 4 points. And then I had to face the brutal truth. But here's the interesting thing with Wentz. So you talk about broken down, and I'm curious. You're talking about the physical traits and how they've eroded due to injury and whatnot. But I'm wondering, how much is physical and how much is mental?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Definitely saw him seemingly lose confidence, really struggle to just make confident decisions on the field and execute some pretty simple plays and some pretty simple throws that I think we're all convinced he has the ability to do and could not do last year. And so I will be curious. I'm still rooting for Carson Wentz, and I will be curious to see how much getting back into a different system, getting back with Frank Reich, if mentally he can recover and experience some of that success that he had previously. I'm really curious
therapy or something. Maybe him and Derek Carr could get together and figure this out in the forest around a bonfire together. I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
I'm rooting for him.
Well, in round two, we go from a few players in a row that you want to root for to a player that you may be counting on, but I don't think many of us are rooting for, and that's Will Fuller. He's the youngest guy on this list, more than likely, or at least the youngest position player, because he's a guy that a lot of people are buying heavy stock in. And speaking of stock, we just had two of our Titans say no to Carson Wentz. So sell all your Carson Wentz stock wherever you have it. If both Titans agree. But Will Fuller, I feel like, should be in that camp because he's suspended for the first game because of PEDs.
And if there was anyone that ever needed it, it's him.
Exactly, which he used PEDs to be able to stay healthy for his contract year. Now he only got a 1-year contract, so he may want to try to find, by hook or by crook, stay healthy again and be able to do it. But the man's never going to be able to stay healthy. There's a lot of talent in that receiving core. He is not guaranteed to be the number one wide receiver. And the time where he should be establishing himself as the number one wide receiver or have a shot to, he's going to be suspended for the very start of the year and give the other players a chance to build a rapport with a guy that one of our Titans doesn't even believe is going to be capable of a bounce back year. And that's Tua Tagovailoa, who needs a bounce back year in order to be a viable quarterback. There's so many things up in the air. If you're buying Will Fuller right now, I feel like you better be getting a really, really low price for him if you're going to buy him, because I definitely wouldn't be.
I come from the belief that if you test negative for steroids, you should be suspended. I think they should all be on them. It makes the game more fun to see someone's head get ripped off out there. Okay, I want the anger. I want the hard hitting. Those tickets cost a lot of money. When I sit in the stands, I want to see blood. Maybe a little splatter on me. It'd be great. No. All joking aside, that sucks for his situation. He's one of those players that he's a burner. He's fast as can be. But again, his body doesn't hold up. I was watching the game where his knee went out, and it was so weird how it happened. His foot kind of drug, and it looked funny. You didn't see it pop out, and then he turns around and grabs it. And you just know, you hate seeing those players just turn around and grab for that knee. And Will Fuller, I mean, there's not really much to his game other than being fast. And I hate saying that, being the unathletic person I am now, but it's I mean, he can burn people, and that's really it. And once he loses that, I don't think there's going to be anything left for him in the NFL. I give 1 or 2 years, I don't even know if he'll be in the NFL.
Absolutely. Yep. So a young guy, but may very well be in the process of breaking down. Would you like to add to the Will Fuller pile there, Russ, or you want to give us your number 2?
I've always been anti-Will Fuller. He'll give you some big weeks, but you can't count on him from week to week. So he's never been on any of my squads. So I'm with you on that, John Miller. And then I'll add a second.
Wait, one more. Will you guys run him in best ball still?
No.
I don't have him in any best ball currently, which means probably not, because I don't think I'm going to be drafting too many more best ball teams.
Hero. Him and Lockett.
Yeah, no, he's still a decent one, and if you can buy him, if you can get him for a low enough draft pick in best ball.
Yeah. I'm going to add to the broken down list, probably still the number 1 receiver for said Carson Wentz, and that's T.Y. Hilton. Love T.Y., but again, another guy getting up there in age, another guy whose game is built around speed and can't stay healthy. I don't see, Pittman is probably still his best competition. So T.Y. still may produce this year at times, but his days are just numbered, and I just can't see T.Y. Hilton being somebody you can count on or should be investing in at this point.
Poor old T.Y., man. That guy was a good player. He was.
If Carson Wentz is breaking down, Nate, then yeah, Carson Wentz is breaking down. How's T.Y. going to even have one more year left in him?
Oh, it's a bonfire. It is a bonfire. Dumpster fire, in fact. I don't know. He's a guy that I've actually never owned on one of my fantasy teams. I've never been a big fan of his. Maybe more so just the Colts in general, but I've never had him on any of my fantasy teams. I've never targeted to get him. I mean, he used to be one of the biggest PPR monsters there was, and to me, it just always seemed like an overabundance of volume is what got him there anyway. And I know volume is always key in this game, but once you got old noodle arm Wentz throwing you the ball now, I just don't know. I don't see it going anywhere for him from here on out.
Well, and I bring him up because I think he's going to have probably some productive games still this year, right? I still think because he's going to get volume that T.Y. is going to produce at points. And then I would just caution anybody from saying, "Oh, I'm going to go invest in T.Y." because I just don't think it's going to last.
Sell when those up.
I can see him being on the Patriots. Maybe they'll trade N'Keal Harry for Hilton or something. All right,
that's a fair trade. T.Y. Hilton notoriously destroys the Houston Texans. So wait until that first game against Houston Texans and then sell T.Y. after it.
That's right. Right. Yep.
Hey, what's your second one?
My second one, and this one hurts because I'm a fan. I like this guy, Adam Thielen. And it's just that not only is he starting to decline with age and stuff like that, the talent around him is getting better. And the guy is just got such a connection with Cousins and especially in the end zone. Those two are just got the mind meld thing going on. And he's dropping, he's catching. I love watching those two play because they'll throw the ball 3 inches off the ground. He'll just turn around, fall, and have it. He just knows that ball is going to be 3 inches off the ground in that end zone, and he just knows right where to get it. And it's hard watching him decline. You got some of those players you just root for, and Thielen's just one of those guys I like watching. So when watching him kind of break down this last year, and still had the touchdowns, though, still had those, but those are going to start to go pretty soon too.
Thoughts on Thielen, Russ?
Well, my thought is I remember when Thielen broke out a little bit unexpectedly, John tried to craft a trade with me that included Thielen, and I just didn't believe Thielen was going to stick around and have the role that he has had for now several years. So, John, you were right in that instance. He was a more valuable commodity than I gave him credit for. But yeah, I think he was already a little bit older when he broke out, which was part of my resistance. And so amazing what he was able to do in his efficiency in the red zone last year. There's no way he's going to be able to maintain that. Plus you've got the young pup, Justin Jefferson, right, on his heels to take a larger percentage of the passing volume. So I agree with Nate. I think he could still be productive this year, but I think the end is drawing near for Adam Thielen.
Absolutely. Justin Jefferson's going to be the number one. I think that it's possible that Thielen belongs on a sell list, but maybe not a broken down list. I would disagree that he has only 1 year left. I think he's the kind. You mentioned his play style as a wide receiver, Nate. I think that's the kind of style that could allow him to be a legitimate wide receiver 3 in fantasy for another this year, next year, a real legit
standard leagues. But those standard leagues are few and far between now. But he's not going to be the commodity he used to be. That's for sure.
I agree with that for sure. I'm going to make my third one in the John Miller Award very quick because it's obvious, but for some people it might not be, and it's AJ Green. AJ Green was just an absolute stud, but I don't think people realize just how many targets he received last year. The Bengals didn't realize AJ Green was done last year, and now they do. The crazy vacated targets is largely coming off of how many targets AJ Green did nothing with last year. So if you're excited about AJ Green coming in with a great quarterback in Kyler Murray, who is a great quarterback, Kyler Murray, I have a lot of stock in Kyler Murray and prediction strike as well. But AJ Green's not going to be the reason why Kyler Murray has a great year. He's done.
Yep, I'm with you. I'll make my third real quick.
Yep, number 3.
Melvin Gordon. It's kind of easy to pick running backs because their shelf life is so short anyways. I don't see Melvin Gordon being one that has an Adrian Peterson-esque extended career. I think he mismanaged his holdout, and that was detrimental for him. He's been battling injuries of late, and now they've got a young pup up and coming that's going to be threatening him for time. So I think we've seen the best of Melvin Gordon, and I don't think he's going to be able to put up numbers anything close to what we've seen historically for him.
Nate, you have any thoughts on Melvin Gordon?
I think he's got 2 good seasons left, and they're not on Denver.
That's it. Yeah, Javonte Williams' hype has been out of control of late.
I think he's going to end up on the Falcons or the Dolphins.
I could see that. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Awesome. Well, the third and final John Miller Award there, Nate.
Third and final. Well, Russ stole my James Conner. That's who I had for my running back. But running back, he stole my other one. I had Melvin Gordon too. Gosh dang it, Russ.
That is so like Russ. That is so like Russ.
Okay, next time we do this, I go first, so I can steal his players. Be fair a little bit. So just real quick off my hip here with the running backs. I'm gonna pick Josh Jacobs. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna pick Josh Jacobs. My Josh Jacobs hate is real though.
It is. Let the hate flow through you.
Gosh, there's so many in this area. I'll pick Mozart. I think his career is got about 1 year left in it. I mean, the guy is older than dirt. Not as old as AJ Green though. You guys know how old AJ Green is?
How old is he?
33 years old. Leave the man alone. He's 30 in football. Jesus. No, really. No, Mostert, the guy, I think he's about 30 years old, 31, somewhere right in there, maybe 29. But the guy could run like a gazelle. I think he had the fastest speed recorded 2 times last year. I think he broke 22 miles an hour, which is incredible. He's 29 years old at the start of the season. He'll be 29. But he's just a guy that can't keep healthy, and when he does, he's just a world beater out there, it seems. But the last few years have been real bad on him. And actually, it's kind of been a little bit of his whole career has been plagued with injury. But it's becoming more evident that I just think his time is done. But as a running back, 29, you're older than dirt out there. You make it to 30, 31. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he'll be a 49er next year. I do still think he'll be in the NFL somewhere, and maybe a backup role, obviously. But the time is limited for this man.
It pains me to agree as a Niners fan, but I think you're spot on. The good thing as a Niners fan is they'll find the next one. They always do. In Shanahan, we trust. Alrighty, we had ourselves a great John Miller Award there with all those broken down players. I'm feeling slightly less broken down just talking about it. But let's go ahead and talk about a few trades here before we get into the trades. Why don't we throw out a quick rundown of our tight end best talent, go somewhat quickly through them, and then we'll finish it off the show today with a few of our least favorite trades of all time and a few recent trades that we wanted to comment on, good or bad. Who'd like to start us off with their top of their tight end list?
Oh man, do we have to go five? Five, it seems like so many.
It's understandable for tight end.
It does. I mean, number one is Travis Kelce, probably the number one tight end there ever has been. I mean, no offense, Tony Gonzalez, but Travis Kelce, he's doing it all, and he's 32 years old now, still doing it, still making it look easy. Got some of the best end zone celebrations in the game. Those are fun to watch too. Makes good commercials. I mean, the guy's got the world at his fingertips right now, and one of the best quarterbacks in the league throwing to him. You can't go wrong. I mean, I don't even think it's Patrick Mahomes that makes him so good. He's just one of those tight ends that is going to blow everyone away no matter what. Number two, oh man, this one's hard. I'm just not a Kittle truther. I keep wanting to put Kittle here, but the guy can't stay healthy, and I don't know. I'm just not a Kittle guy. I'm really not. Darren Waller is going to be my number two out there, and it's not just the story about how he brought his life back together, which I love that about him. He's my favorite Raider. He's really the only Raider I like at this point. But the guy's story, the way he's approached his new beginning per se, the way he's surrounded himself with the good people on the off season. He's out there working with Tony Gonzalez. He's out there working with these other great tight ends, getting all the pointers he possibly can. He's later in age. His breakout was late, but the guy's the number one wide receiver on a football team. And I mean, that's probably saying a little bit less about the Raiders wide receivers too. But I think the guy, just talked about the guy's story, the guy's talent. It's inspirational. Number three, I guess I would have to put Kittle here. Again, for me, it's just another celebrating. Yeah, I was never going to put a Niner over a Raider. Anyway, the guy he can't stay healthy. It seems like he's made out of glass out there. Every time I turn on a Niner game, he's watching from the booth up top, making funny faces to the camera. And it's just, the guy's a character. He's fun. I'll give him that. But, it's just the unavailability throughout the seasons, it doesn't do it. Now this is where it gets hard. I mean, it gets real hard. So I'm going to put one on here that just is kind of weird, but I'm gonna go with Noah Fant. I think Noah Fant is way talented than the team he's on, way more talented than the team he plays for. I think that the Denver Broncos just hold this man back. I think he could be one of the best, maybe one of the better receivers in the league if you just want to look at it that way. But they're not going to unleash him. There's too many mouths to feed. The guy just has too much competition there. I wish he could go to another team and see what he would do. And I think that's why he's great for this list. The next would be Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews broke out at a young age for a tight end. I think on a different team, he would be a much better tight end with heavier volume. He seems to have a great end zone connection with Lamar Jackson. But again, I think it's a quarterback that kind of holds him back, even though that it seems to me like Lamar Jackson looks for him. I don't know. It's just, I'm not a huge Lamar Jackson fan, I guess, either. Yeah. But what was that, 4?
That's 5.
That's 5. Man,
you did it.
I can't even fit Jonnu Smith in there. That's messed up.
I like it. Jonnu Smith was in my debate, and so was Mark Andrews. I'm going to go next and go quickly through it because I actually agree with your number 4. I'm pleased that we both had Fant at number 4, a player that Rush traded away for a 3rd round pick. I mean, that's amazing how bad a trade that was. But Fant was my number 4, which is great. But number 1 is Kittle. I'm gonna have to start calling Nate Green with all this recency bias, because Kittle has had a couple of years where he's been nagged by injuries lately, but he's been very, very healthy. And the reason why he gets nicked
How
up is
many years
because
has he been in the league, Miller? It's a couple of years.
I mean, this is his second contract, the highest, richest tight end contract of all time, for a reason. The reason why Kittle gets nicked up is because he does more than any tight end in football. He's the best blocking tight end in football, the best blocking tight end in football, as a guy who has a stake in being the best receiving tight end in football. So if you're talking about talent,
homer, folks, solid homer. Keep going.
It is all but a person who watches the game, only a person who watches the game. And Kittle is amazing. And obviously I want him to stay healthy more consistently. And I love Kelsey. You know, I was advocating Kelsey in the first round before it was cool, but Kelsey is 3 on my list because he is incredibly talented. But if Kittle had Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, he would be putting up even more numbers than that. I believe that. And Waller was my number 2. We both shared a number 2. We just flip-flop 1 and 3. 4 is Fant. Definitely big agree there. And 5 was Fant's college teammate Hawkinson, your other boy, Nate Matthews. But there were a lot of people there that I wrestled with down at the bottom. Russ, what you got?
Okay, so this hurt me a little bit, but I did put Kittle number 1 because I think he is so dynamic at both receiving and blocking. And when we talk about in a vacuum, I kind of excluded injuries from the vacuum as well. So if you're just going on talent and ability, it hurts me a little bit, but I'm putting Kittle 1.
What is the best ability?
Availability. Yep.
Yeah, but not in this conversation. I'm talking about talent. Number 2,
available for my top 5.
Number 2, I have Kelsey. And he's not as great a blocker as some other guys on this list, but he is so dominant as a receiver and producing at such a high level for so long. Kelsey deserves number 2. Similar, I have Waller number 3. Again, not known for blocking, but he's so dominant as a receiver that I think he deserves to be at the 3 spot. Fant does not make my list. 1, because we just haven't seen it.
Bad talent evaluation.
And 2, he's not a blocker at all. And so he has to be dominant as a receiver, and he may be, but I don't know what we're basing that on yet. So I think you guys are a little premature, a little speculative in the Fant love.
I've been known for that.
Sure.
End up.
4, I have Hawkinson, and 5, I have Andrews.
Very nice.
And honorable mention number 6, Kyle Pitts, soon to be number 1.
Of course. I wonder why you mentioned Pitts, although obviously Pitts belongs in this discussion. He was actually in my top 5 for a minute. We haven't seen it yet. I believe in it, honestly, but we haven't seen it yet. Let's finish this bad boy off with a few trades. We're gonna come to the trade section of our league to do it, but we're gonna start off with the 3 of us talking about our least favorite trade, the trades that we feel we got the least amount of value back. The ones we got screwed the most. So who would like to start? We know mine's the worst out of all of us because Dylan's not here.
I'll go first. Because I this one I've only spoken about one time. It was to Miller. I've had trouble getting this one past my lips, especially in front of Russ, for a long time. But at one point, Green, because he's at every player in the world, I was working out a trade with him. And it was for a tight end, and he was holding Gronk and Kelsey, and he said you could have either one, and I took Gronk. That was Gronk's downfall year too. That was really where it started to turn down. Now this was about 3-4 years ago. It was early in our league and stuff, but man, I have regretted that ever since. So maybe the first trade was a trade I didn't make.
I was gonna say that's a pretty good lesson for all fantasy players. Sometimes the worst trade is the road not taken.
Yeah. Wow. Very glad you don't have Kelsey. Very glad that I do. That would have been damaging to our league.
Well, it's even more than just you ended up with him. I was the one who would ultimately get Kelsey from him, and I rode him to a championship. And so that is a big time dominoes falling from that choice. Even though that means that you have made so many good trades over the years that your worst one is just a slight choice that you made. When the people hear my trade, we're going to be talking about a really actually bad trade. So Russ, go ahead.
Sure, mine. So think you could well, first of all, I'm sure there are trades I'm not thinking of with Green that have so many players, I can't even track it. Like I can't even tell you how it turned out. So that might be out there. I think most of my bad trades are directly related to me trying to get something for players before I cut them, right? So you mentioned the Fant trade. I was going to be cutting people. So, all right, give me a third, Donnie. Of course, he gets better value from that, but I get something. But the one that I remember as being the worst, and I finally set right this offseason, same idea. I had more players than I wanted to cut. So I thought I would put two players together and try to upgrade and thin out my roster at the end of the year. And so Sammy Watkins was heading out of Buffalo and heading to Kansas City. And so I thought this is a tremendous opportunity. And so I'm going to get on that Sammy Watkins train that people are fading. And so I sent Carlos Hyde, which at the time he was still serviceable, but not a huge sacrifice. And a player that I believed in, and Nate knows this.
Who was that player?
Early in the Stephon Diggs love. And I set Stephon Diggs and Carlos Hyde to Matt Miller for Sammy Watkins. And I regretted that for year after year after year. I tried to get Stephon Diggs back from Matt to set things right. And it wasn't until this offseason I was able to do so. But that was my worst trade.
Absolutely. And I like both of you guys' trade choices because there's real fantasy lessons in them. Like you mentioned that not being sure what Sammy Watkins was about when he was coming from Buffalo. We see now looking back in hindsight, it's like, why would you ever even consider going after Sammy Watkins? But it just shows you how the value and the perception of players changes over the years. It changes. Sometimes it changes really fast.
Andy Reid made the same mistake.
Andy Reid made the same mistake. Exactly. All right. So mine, I traded. Yeah, it was horrible. I traded.
It was horrible.
I traded for Devontae Parker. We talked at the very beginning of the show. We talked about my team. After I won the championship, I was in a spot where I had won it, but I knew that I needed more to ever win it again. And so I was in a spot where I was willing to deal from my future to be able to bring in a player that I perceived to be a starter. And Devontae Parker was just coming off of his breakout year. And I traded more than I should have, 3 first-round picks. It seems worse now. It's still bad, but it seems worse now because A, Devontae Parker was horrible, and B, those picks are starting to come up. But it was actually like each of the picks were 4 years. The earliest of the first round pick was 4 years in advance. But a lesson that I learned is it doesn't matter how far in advance you trade. If you trade 3 first round picks, you better be getting a king's ransom for it. And I did not, and my team has been suffering for it ever since. Not just because Devontae Parker didn't, do anything after I traded for him, but because of how much I gave up to get him.
So John, let me jump on that. So last week you used me as an example of a guy not being aggressive enough in going for a championship. And now I'll return the favor and use you as an example of a guy who mortgaged too much in the hopes of being competitive for a championship. So
absolutely true.
Our viewers get to see both sides of the coin through the two of us.
Most definitely. And we'll get to further see how it plays out. Because I do feel it's going to be interesting it's a cool case study to see whether or not I'm able to dig out of this hole and build this rebuild with all this first round picks that I'm coming. But it's also a cool case study to see if you are able to get the championships that you should get with the dominating team that you've built up, because you're not going to feel satisfied if 3 years from now you maybe how many championships would satisfy you 3 years from now? That's a good question.
Well, we should be talking at least a 5-year window.
5 years from now, how many championships would satisfy you? That's a
really good question.
They're a good question, right? But it's all part of the interesting case study as we go forward when we see how the choices that we may influence it. But in 5 years, to your point, in 5 years you'll still be a viable team because you've never given up any of your pieces to compete. I thought this would be a good first trade for us to talk about recent trades. We talked about our worst trades, but now we could just talk about one trade a piece that we feel like is either good or bad in the recent times. This was a recent trade that was made over the summer between Russ and Potter, where Russ acquired Jerry Jeudy, and he traded his second round pick next year, 2022, and Green's second round pick next year, 2022. I have some thoughts, as you know. Russ will need to be able to wait his turn since he's involved in the trade. But Nate, what thought do you have on this trade?
I'm probably not the one to ask. I don't like Jerry Jeudy. I don't. I mean, yeah, I liked him when we were drafting, just like everyone else did, but the guy has shown nothing. He can't even catch the ball. I mean, the balls were right in his hands and he dropped them. And here we are with a guy that was supposed to be touted as incredible route running, incredible hands. I haven't seen it in the NFL, and not, I mean, I know he's a rookie and I know he's still a young guy, but that Denver Bronco team, unless they get a better quarterback, I'm not sure if this was a bad trade or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's fair. And I feel like that's the part of it. You never know what breaks are going to happen afterwards. My take on the trade focuses on where we were when it happened. And Green has just started now dismantling his team and talking about he's going to dismantle his team. He's showing signs of entering a rebuild like I do. If that happens, then that 2022 second is going to be more valuable. He was going to be a middle of the road because he had players to be able to, be on the fringe of the playoffs, make it into the playoffs. He was going to be a middle of the road second, which is almost a third, and Russ's seconds are basically thirds. And so I felt like that just wasn't enough value to get back for a guy that he traded his pick in this year's draft. He had the number one overall pick, what would become the number one overall pick. He traded it for the pick that he got, Jerry Jeudy. And so to then trade Jerry Jeudy, who he traded a 101 to get, for basically a third round pick, which is how I perceive Russ's second round picks to be, and what at the time would have been a middle of the second round pick, just didn't seem like enough to get for a guy who still is very highly thought of. Yeah, I think we have seen he's the route runner, but what we haven't seen is whether or not he's going to get the quarterback play, to your point. You have any, you want to come to bat for your trade there, Russ?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things at play. I think one of our goals is to buy low and sell high, right? So Jerry Jeudy is a guy that coming out of college was on par with CeeDee Lamb, right? The debate was CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb had a more productive.
Not for the Raiders. It wasn't for the Raiders.
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Well,
No, it wasn't.
Again, all of those people, all the intelligent football analysts were debating CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. CeeDee Lamb had a great rookie year. Jerry Jeudy, not so much. But like John said, we did see phenomenal route running from Jerry Jeudy. We absolutely saw drops. But I believe it's been commonly stated that drops are the easiest thing to fix for a young wide receiver. Yes, right now his quarterback situation is terrible, but he's what, 22? And we know receivers, I mean, he could play till he's 32.
Great point.
So if I can get in early and make sure, and we just talked about, like, I'd like to say that I have at least a 5-year window. Well, now I just added another young piece that doesn't have to hit for me this year. But if he does hit, then I've returned great value on 2 second-round picks. And then keep in mind that I have too many picks right now to even work with. So if I can consolidate my picks and make sure that I'm not wasting them and get a player like Jerry Jeudy, no skin off my back. If he ends up flaming out and they don't get a good quarterback for 3 years, he can sit and be my 10th receiver and no problem. But if he hits, and now I've got a top 12 receiver or even top 24 receiver, would be great value, honestly.
Yeah.
Then I benefit. So
I think it's easy to justify the trade from your perspective, especially in your position. I feel like it's a great move for you. And I felt that at the time. It seemed, as Nate alluded to, it seeming a little bit more to be evening out as time is going by, especially if Greens ends up being a high pick in the second round. But I'm not going to make either one of you answer this question. But if you were in Blake's position, the question would be, would you have made that trade? For the answer, it would be, for me, it would be no. But that would have, again, I'm not going to make either one of you answer that question.
Well, let me say this real quick. I hope it's an even trade.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't really want it to be lopsided. I hope that he gets good values for those 2 seconds.
For sure.
But no, I wouldn't. I think Blake would be better served when he gets a young, valuable piece. I think Blake needs to hold on to him tighter, right? yeah, I guess I'll end it there.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Alrighty, let's see here. Scrolling through the recent trades here to be able to find on one I'd like to hear. That was the one that I wanted to comment on. Saquon Barkley was traded recently. Which one of you would like to jump on the trade that I made as I remove myself from the discussion?
I like it all, but except for Galladay. I'm not a Galladay guy at all. But no, you made a good 3 firsts for I think you're right on par with the value on what he's worth, especially in our league, the way trades work out. You got to get a 3 firsts for a huge running back like that, and maybe a couple other pieces. I think it was a good move for both teams. It's going to benefit both you guys. I like the move for both. I don't think this is a bad trade at all. I think both of you guys did very well.
Russ?
I agree. I'm most interested to hear. Well, so first of all, I think Johnny made the right decision, right? Part of the reason I traded Barkley to you is I didn't feel like it was going to bite me in the butt, right? Because I just didn't think the rest of your team was going to mean that I had to face Barkley in the playoffs. So then I got really nervous when you put him on the block. I'm like, no, wait, this was not the plan. But I think you made the right call because, there's if you're going full rebuild, then I think you got to move your best player, especially at the running back position, and get those picks back and start that process. And I know that you really focused on getting your picks back in particular, which makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things I would be interested in you talking about is your process of kind of working. I'm not sure how many people made you offers. I feel like you were very intentional about trying to get the best value from those offers. I'd be curious if you would talk about that process a little bit.
Yeah, well, there were the two of you were involved in those discussions. We had obviously Travis, who I traded with, and there was one other team who I received an offer of 3 firsts from as well. And so, yeah, it definitely was a fun trade discussion to be a part of. The market for Barkley. Ultimately, I did getting my own picks back. You'll see Elderwand in there, getting my own picks back, and knowing that I'm basically ensuring that I'm going to have the first overall pick in next year's draft and the following year's draft, where I get to, for the first time, say my favorite name in all of football right now, which is Bijan Robinson, 2023. I'm very excited about Bijan Robinson in 2023, and the 2 stud running backs that are coming out in 2022 are not quite Bijan Robinson's level, but they are going to be very valuable depending on where they land. And so I was eager to get those picks back, knowing that I'll be able to start building up that value. I knew I needed to get 3 firsts, and getting Kenny Galladay made me feel like I was getting 4 firsts, because Galladay, while not a guy who I can use in the current structure of my team, you guys know what the amount of trading I've been doing. He's not going to be on my team for very long, and so I'll be turning him into draft capital as well. And he's a guy I put Detroit because I just out of habit, but he was already a giant when that trade was made. And he's a guy who I mentioned I still believe in Daniel Jones. They paid him no wide receiver. I don't know if you guys quite remember this. I know you realized it, but no wide receiver but Kenny Galladay got paid in this free agent market. Not one. Every other free agent wide receiver had to settle for pennies on the dollar and basically betting on themselves deals. The only one who got a long-term deal was Kenny Galladay. And so I was excited to get him basically thrown on, I felt like, to a 3 firsts that I was searching for, a guy who I believe is going to be able to be startable now for a competing team. So I don't think I'll have any problem flipping him.
I don't know if I agree with you on that getting paid thing. I just think that's a byproduct of being the Giants. No one wants to go there. They're going to have to pay up to get someone there.
Maybe. Highly possible. All righty. Did anybody else have any other trades that they wanted to discuss there recently?
Not that I can think of.
Lots of them to choose from, and we'll be doing a good amount over the course of our time here. The next time we get in front of the cameras, but we had a really good discussion for sure, and I have another fun show. We will be putting the timestamps on this one again, as we did the last time. I felt like that was fun going through and seeing what all of those were. another good football discussion with you guys. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to add on to it before we take it out here?
Who you guys got in the NBA Finals?
Ah, there you go. Russ, who you got in the NBA Finals? I honestly have not the first idea.
I guess I'm rooting for the Bucks. My sister and her family are in Wisconsin, and so that has a little bit of a draw. And as great as Chris Paul is, I've just never really liked the guy. So go Bucks.
What did you say, Nate?
I'm going for the Suns. The Dan Marley fan of me is still there, and I got to root for the Suns.
Dan Marley, that is spectacular. That's a fantastic shout out to Dan Marley. I mean, if I was going to pick who I'm rooting for, I have no idea who's going to win because I haven't been following it nearly closely enough. But I'm a huge fan of the Fantasy Footballers podcast, and they've just been crazy excited about the Suns making it to the playoffs alone, let alone
They were funny on the last episode.
They were dancing it up. And so, yeah, I'll be real happy for them if the Suns pull it down.
Actually, so I'm emboldened now. I'm definitely rooting against the Suns. I remember, so Sonics fan, Game 7 Western Conference Finals.
Wait, what team? Sonics? They still a team?
I don't know
Yeah.
that team. The Sonics?
And I was working at Safeway during Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. And so I missed the game, but I got done and immediately checked the scores and saw that Charles Barkley, Dan Marley, and the Suns had beaten the Sonics, and that the Suns had shot 63 freaking free throws. 63 free throws. The Suns suck. Go Bucks.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That is a great place to end it. But another fun one, guys. Looking forward to getting in front of the camera with you guys again here soon.
Thank you, Commish.
Yep, good show. Good job, guys.
Bye, guys.